My name is Nathaniel Price. I'm 72 years old, and I have learned that the quietest man in the room is often the one holding all the cards. Last night, my only daughter Brenda pushed me down the stairs at a family dinner. "Hurry up, Dad!" she screamed, her voice tight with rage. "Don't embarrass me in front of my real parents!" She was talking about her in-laws. I fell. I hit my head. And as I lay there bleeding on their expensive white carpet, not a single person moved to help me. So while they went back to their party, I made one single phone call. When my daughter woke up this morning, she had 66 missed calls. Before I tell you what happens next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to show someone who underestimated you who you really are. The dinner had been suffocating from the moment I walked in. I am a simple man. I live in the same small paid-off house my late wife Anne-Marie and I bought 40 years ago. I wear comfortable clothes. Tonight I was in my best and only blazer and a clean pair of slacks. It wasn't enough. Brenda and her husband Chad live in a glass penthouse that feels less like a home and more like a high-end furniture showroom. Cold marble abstract art I'm sure cost more than my car and windows that looked down on the rest of the city. I was the only black man in the room aside from the server they had hired for the evening. The tension was immediate. Beverly, Chad's mother, held up her wine glass, the diamonds on her hand catching the light. "Nate," she said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "This is an $800 bottle of Cabernet," Chad insisted. "I do hope you can appreciate it. I'm not sure if you're used to this." I just nodded, giving her the gentle, harmless smile I had perfected. Used to it, I thought. Not really. The $900 bottle I had last night was much smoother, but I just smile. "It's lovely, Beverly. Thank you." Chad, my son-in-law, laughed, a short barking sound. "Be nice, Mom. Dad Price is simple. He likes simple things. Right, Nate? A good cold beer is more your speed, isn't it?" I felt my daughter's eyes on me. Brenda, my only child. She was watching me, her smile frozen, pleading with her eyes. "Please, Dad. Just fit in. Just be quiet. Don't make this hard for me." She was so desperate to be one of them. She had forgotten who she was. She had forgotten the smart, funny girl I raised in our little house, the girl who used to say she hated snobs. Now she was married to one and desperately trying to become one. The simple comments didn't stop. They came from Richard, Chad's father. He was a man who wore his arrogance like an expensive suit. He leaned in his cologne so strong it made my eyes water. "So, Nate," he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Chad tells me you were a mailman, or was it a delivery driver?" "Something like that," I said quietly. "Logistics." "Logistics," he boomed, scoffing as he cut into his filet mignon. "Right. Must have been tough. All that heavy lifting. I bet your pension is, well..." He paused for effect, looking around the table. "It's a good thing you have Brenda and Chad to look out for you now." He reached over and patted my hand, a gesture of pure condescension. I held my tongue. I didn't tell him that logistics was my title as the senior vice president of global logistics for one of the largest shipping firms in the world. I didn't tell him that I had retired not because I was old, but because I was bored. I didn't tell him that my pension was a $5 million investment portfolio managed by a private firm that Anne-Marie and I had set up decades ago. A boglehead through and through, simple living, high savings. I just nodded. "You're right, Richard. It's a blessing." My daughter Brenda let out that high-pitched fake laugh again, the one that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Dad, you're so funny. Yes, we take very good care of my father, don't we, honey?" She looked at Chad, desperate for his approval. Chad just grunted, staring at his phone. The rest of the dinner was a performance, a torturous one. They talked about their upcoming trip to Aspen, and Beverly made sure to say, "The chalet is ski in, ski out, of course. I simply cannot abide having to walk to the lift." They talked about the new Tesla Chad was test driving, and Richard complained about the taxes on his third vacation home. Every word was a small, sharp knife designed to highlight what they had and what they assumed I did not. I watched my daughter. I watched her mirror Beverly's hand gestures. I watched her fawn over Richard's painfully boring stories about his golf club. She was a stranger to me. She was so lost. She had forgotten the woman who raised her, my late wife, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie was brilliant, a financial analyst who saw the world in numbers and patterns. She had hated people like this. She would have seen right through these paper-thin, arrogant fools, and she would have been heartbroken to see what our daughter had become. Finally, the charade was over. I felt exhausted, not from the day, but from the sheer effort of sitting there, of being small, of being the poor old mailman they needed me to be. "Brenda," I said quietly, pushing my chair back, "it's getting late. I think I'll head home." Brenda's relief was visible. The burden was leaving. She stood up her heels, clicking angrily on the marble floor as she walked me to the foyer. The penthouse had this ridiculous internal staircase, just 6 or 7 steps leading from the elevated dining area down to the front door. The carpet was a thick, plush, offensive shade of white. "Dad," she started, her voice a low hiss, "why did you have to be so quiet? You made things awkward. Beverly was just trying to make conversation about the wine, and you just sat there. You made me look bad." I was at the top of the short staircase. I moved slowly. My hip, an old injury from a college football game, was a bit stiff. I reached for the polished steel handrail. "I'm sorry you felt that way, Brenda. I was just—" She cut me off. Her patience, worn thin from a night of social climbing, snapped. "Can you just hurry up?" she hissed, her voice sharp with a cruelty that shocked me. "You're always so slow. You're embarrassing me. Don't you understand? I'm trying to build a life here. My in-laws are important. Don't embarrass me in front of my real parents." Her real parents. The words hit me harder than the shove that came next. She pushed me, hard, right between my shoulder blades. It wasn't a little nudge, it was a violent, frustrated shove. I'm 72 years old. My balance isn't what it was. My hand reaching for the rail missed. My foot missed the first step entirely. I lurched forward. It wasn't a dramatic movie stunt fall. It was a clumsy, heavy, painful tumble. 6 steps felt like a canyon. My glasses flew off my face. I heard the sickening crack as they hit the marble landing below. My head connected with the drywall at the bottom. A sharp, wet thud. White-hot pain exploded behind my eyes. I tasted copper in my mouth. I landed in a heap, tangled my bad hip, screaming in protest. The world spun. I groaned, and I looked up. The whole family, Brenda, Chad, Richard, and Beverly, was standing at the top of the stairs, silhouettes against the bright light of the dining room. They were just watching, looking down on me, like I was a piece of trash that had just fallen out of the bin. Brenda stood there, her hands still slightly raised, her face a mask of pure annoyance. Not horror, not concern, annoyance. No one moved. No one said, "Dad, are you okay?" No one rushed to help me. Beverly, the mother-in-law, let out a long theatrical sigh. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "What a drama queen." Chad actually chuckled, a low, dismissive sound. "Well," he said, "that's one way to make an exit." And Brenda, my daughter, my child, she just glared at me. "Dad, look what you did," she said, her voice as cold as the marble floor. "You got blood on the carpet." And then as one they turned. They walked back into the living room. I heard Beverly's laugh echo down the hall. "Brenda, darling, be a dear and get me another glass of that wonderful wine, won't you?" I was left alone, lying in a broken heap at the bottom of their stairs, bleeding, humiliated. But as the shock faded, something else rose up, a cold, clear, diamond-hard resolve. They think I'm weak. They think I'm poor. They think I'm nothing. They have just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I can picture the next morning perfectly, clear as day, while I was sitting in a silk bathrobe in a suite at the Four Seasons sipping the best Blue Mountain coffee money can buy. My daughter Brenda was just waking up in her glass penthouse. The sun was probably streaming in, hitting that stain on the white carpet near the stairs. The stain I had left. I know my son-in-law Chad. He would have woken up with a groan, his head pounding from the $800 wine he had been pouring down his throat. He would have nudged Brenda. "I hope your old man had the decency to call a cab," he would have grumbled. "God, I hate it when he pulls those drama queen stunts just for attention. He's fine." My daughter, my Brenda, would have just nodded, too tired to argue. "I know, Chad. I'll deal with it later. He doesn't get it." She would have walked barefoot across the cold marble floor to the kitchen. A high-tech monstrosity of stainless steel that always looked like no one had ever actually cooked in it. She would grab her phone to order groceries from the upscale delivery service. It was a weekly ritual I knew well. She never went to the store herself. Why would she when someone else would do it for her? She would have filled her virtual cart. Organic milk, $6 avocados from Peru, that expensive sourdough bread from the downtown bakery, maybe some champagne for mimosas. They needed to recover from the stress of her father bleeding on their floor. She would have pressed checkout. And then, the first pebble in the avalanche, payment declined, a flicker of annoyance. She would have tried again. Payment declined. "That's weird," she would call out to Chad. "The grocery card isn't working. Did you use it for something?" Chad, annoyed, would have tossed her his wallet from the bedroom. "Use mine. The system's probably just glitching. It's Sunday morning." She would take his card, a shiny platinum American Express, the one he always made a show of slapping on the table at restaurants. She would enter the numbers. Payment declined. She would have frowned. She would try it again. Slower this time. Payment declined. "Chad," her voice would be a little higher now, a little tighter. "Yours isn't working either. What's going on?" He would have stalked into the kitchen, grabbing the phone from her hand. "You must have typed it wrong. Give it here." He would try to log into his banking app. "Invalid password." He would try again. "Invalid password." "What the hell?" he would mutter, requesting a password reset. No email would arrive. "It's a system error," he would insist, his voice rising. "It has to be." But I knew as I watched the sun rise over the park from my hotel suite, it was not a system error. It was a system correction. The first real panic would have set in when the landline rang, that shrill, jarring sound. Brenda would answer, annoyed. "Hello," a professional cold voice on the other end. "Ms. Price Thompson, this is building management for the penthouse residences. We're calling because your automated rent payment of $8,000 has failed." Brenda's blood would run cold. I know it did. "What? That's impossible," she would have stammered. "The rent is always paid. It's automatic. My husband handles it. It's from his bonus account." "Ma'am, the account it draws from has been frozen by the primary signatory. We require payment in full by 5 p.m. today, or we will begin formal eviction proceedings. Have a nice day." Click. She would have stared at Chad, her eyes wide with terror. "Chad, what did he mean frozen? What bonus account? You told me that account was yours." Chad, I imagine, was already sweating. His face, usually so smug and pink, would be pale. "It is. I mean, it's complicated. It's a joint trust. It's just a glitch. I'll call the bank." But before he could dial, his phone would ring. A different number. "Mr. Thompson, this is BMW Financial Services. Your lease payment for the 7 Series was declined this morning." "I'll pay it next week," Chad would snap, trying to sound authoritative. "I'm busy." "Sir," the voice on the other end would be just as cold. "You are already 60 days past due. Your deferment period has been revoked. If we do not receive payment by end of day, we will be repossessing the vehicle. Good day." Click. "Chad?" Brenda would be screaming now. 60 days past due. You told me you paid it. You told me you got that huge bonus." "I did. I mean, I will. It's just deferred," he would be shouting back, scrambling for a lie, tripping over his own deceit. And then the symphony would begin. Beep. A text message for Brenda. "American Express alert, your supplementary card account ending in 005 has been suspended by the primary account holder." Beep. A text message for Chad. "American Express alert, your supplementary card account ending in 0006 has been suspended by the primary account holder." Beep. An email to Brenda. "Saks Fifth Avenue, your account is frozen pending payment." Beep. An email to Chad. "Your Apple Pay has been disabled. Primary account holder." Chad would finally look at Brenda, his mind slow as it was finally connecting the dots. "Brenda, those cards, they aren't yours, are they? They're his." "No," she would lie. It's a family account." "Brenda," Chad would grab her arm. "That $8,000 rent, that wasn't my bonus, was it? It was him. Your father was paying our rent." Before she could answer, the other phone would ring. The landline again. The one they never used. Brenda would pick it up, trembling. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson. This is Crestview Academy." The private school. The $25,000 a semester private school for their 5-year-old son, Noah. "We are calling regarding an outstanding balance. The tuition check you provided last week has been returned." "Returned?" Brenda's voice would be a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. Stamped account frozen. We will have to ask you to keep Noah home tomorrow until the balance is settled." Click. That's when I know my daughter finally looked at her cell phone. really looked at it. She would have scrolled past the alerts from Saks, from Visa, from the electric company. She would have seen the 66 missed calls from banks, from creditors, and she would have seen the 20 missed calls from Dad. She would have tried my number, the one I've had for 30 years. She would have listened to the beep, 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 and then the automated message, "The number you have dialed has been disconnected." I can see her face, the confusion, the irritation, the slow, dawning, ice-cold realization. She would have turned to her husband. "Chad," she would say, her voice shaking. "He's gone. He's not at the house. His phone is disconnected. Oh my God, Chad, what did we do?" Brenda's scream was primal. It wasn't just fear, it was the sound of a reality collapsing. "These are Dad's cards," she shrieked, holding her phone up as if it were on fire. "The rent, the cars, the school. It's all him. It's all been him." Chad just stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. "His cards," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Your father's cards. You told me he was a mailman. You told me he was broke." "I thought he was." Brenda was sobbing now, swiping frantically at her phone screen, her knuckles white. "He lives in that tiny house. He wears old clothes. He said he worked in logistics." Logistics. Chad whispered the word, tasting like ash in his mouth. He finally understood. He hadn't just married into a simple family. He had been played. No, they had been played. And then Brenda saw it. The notification center on her phone. It was a sea of red. 66 missed calls. 66. She scrolled through them, her hand shaking violently. Bank of America, Chase, American Express, the Crestview Academy, BMW Financial, the Penthouse Residences, Saks, Neiman Marcus, and scattered among them 20 missed calls from a single contact, Dad. "Oh my God," she whispered. The calls from Dad weren't him checking in. They were the automated fraud alerts. He was the bank. He was the system. "Call him," Chad roared, grabbing her shoulders. "Call him right now. Tell him it was a mistake. Tell him we'll apologize. Tell him anything." With trembling fingers, Brenda pressed the contact. "Dad." She put the phone to her ear. Her breath held. It didn't even ring. A cold electronic voice spoke immediately. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed has been disconnected." Click. She stared at the phone. "Disconnected," she whispered. "No, no, no, no. He wouldn't. He can't." She frantically dialed another number. The landline. The one in the small, dusty house she hadn't visited in over a year. The number she'd had memorized since she was a child. She listened. One ring. An empty, hollow sound echoing in a house where no one was home. 2 rings. 3. 4. It rang and rang and rang, a lonely mocking sound until the voicemail picked up. A voice from the past. My voice. Cheerful. Simple. "Hi, you've reached Nate. Sorry I missed you. Leave a message at the beep." Beep. Brenda dropped the phone. It clattered onto the marble floor. She turned to Chad, her face completely white, all the anger gone, replaced by a pure, bottomless terror. "Chad," she whispered. "He's not at the house. He's gone. I wasn't in a hospital. Hospitals are for victims, and I was done being a victim. I was sitting in the presidential suite at the Four Seasons. The room was 3 times the size of my daughter's entire penthouse, decorated in deep woods and quiet, expensive fabrics. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights blurred into a river of diamonds. I sat in a high-backed leather chair, not the cold plastic of an emergency room. A glass of deep amber liquid, a 25-year-old single malt, sat untouched on the mahogany desk beside me. The only sound in the vast room was the soft, rhythmic snip-snip of surgical scissors. Dr. Samuels, my personal physician for over 20 years, was finishing the last stitch on my forehead. His touch was discreet, professional, and blessedly steady. "Just a clean laceration, Nate," he murmured, his voice low. "You were lucky. A few inches lower, and we'd be discussing a severe concussion or a fractured orbital." He applied a small, clean bandage. I nodded slowly, the movement tight. Oh, I knew I was lucky. I was lucky my daughter had pushed me. I was lucky her in-laws had laughed. I was lucky they had all shown me in the clearest possible terms exactly who they were. The bleeding had stopped, but something else had just begun. Sitting across from me in an identical leather chair was the woman who held all the keys to the kingdom, Anita Jackson. She wasn't just my estate planner, she was my fortress. She was the executor of my late wife Anne Marie's will, and for 30 years she had been my most trusted friend and advisor. While Dr. Samuels looked concerned, Anita looked calm. Not just calm, she looked focused. She was a sharp, brilliant woman wearing a dark blue suit that probably cost more than my daughter's sofa. Her files were arranged perfectly on the desk between us. She was the human equivalent of a finely tuned engine, and I knew right now she was running at full power. I remembered the call I'd made at 2 a.m. After they had left me, after they had walked past my bleeding body to have another glass of wine, I had laid there on that plush white carpet for 10 minutes. Just listening to their laughter, listening to Beverly's shrill voice complaining about the stock market. Then I pulled myself up. My hip ached, my head throbbed, but my mind was a block of ice. I didn't go out the front door. I took the service elevator down to the loading dock. I sat on a concrete step in the cold night air, the blood drying on my cheek, and I made one call. Not to 911, not to the police. I called her. My voice hadn't even been shaking. It was flat, empty. "Anita," I said. "It's time." A pause on the other end. No questions. No, "Nate, are you okay?" Just the 4 words I needed to hear. "Consider it done, Nate." After that, I called Dr. Samuels. "I've had an accident. Meet me at the suite." Then I called my private security who picked me up from that loading dock in a black town car, unseen, unheard. I am not a poor man. I am just a man who has played poor for a very, very long time. Dr. Samuels finished packing his black leather bag. "You'll need to rest, Nate. No sudden movements, and I'd recommend avoiding stairs." He allowed himself a small, dry smile. I thanked him. He nodded to Anita, a gesture of deep respect, and let himself out. The heavy suite door closed with a soft, expensive thud sealing us inside. Now we were alone. Anita hadn't moved. She waited until the door was shut, then slid a single thin file across the polished desk. "I did as you instructed, Nate," she said. Her voice was smooth, precise. "Protocol Anne Marie was activated at 2:03 a.m. this morning." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. I already knew, of course. Anne Marie and I had designed the protocol ourselves, but I wanted to hear it. I needed to hear the sound of the gates closing. Anita tapped the file. "It means," she said, "that every supplementary credit card issued from your primary accounts, specifically the 2 held by Brenda Price Thompson and the 3 held by Chad Thompson, are, as of this moment, just pieces of plastic." She paused. "It means the $8,000 automated monthly rent subsidy for the penthouse residents has been terminated effective immediately." I stared at the untouched glass of scotch. "It means," she continued, "the lease guarantee you co-signed for that BMW 7 Series has been legally revoked, citing 60 days of non-payment by them, which, as you know, you had previously been covering without their knowledge. It means the tuition payment for Crestview Academy, which was scheduled to post tomorrow morning, has been canceled. The account it draws from is frozen." She leaned forward slightly. "And finally, it means that every single financial safety net you have spent the last 2 years weaving to protect your daughter has just been removed. As of this moment, Nate, they are entirely, completely on their own." I closed my eyes. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, cold, hollowing sense of quiet. The quiet of a battlefield right after the first cannon shot has been fired. "Protocol Anne Marie," I whispered. "My late wife. My brilliant Anne Marie." She had known. Even from the grave she had seen this day coming. She had left me the tools. Not for revenge, for correction. I opened my eyes and finally picked up the glass. "Good," I said, the liquid burning a welcome trail down my throat. "That's a start." I picked up the glass of scotch, the ice clinking softly, but I didn't drink. I just stared at the golden liquid. "She pushed me, Anita." I said it quietly. The words hung in the air of that vast, silent suite. Anita's face, usually so composed, tightened for just a fraction of a second. That was all the emotion she allowed herself. "Pushed you down the stairs at their home because I was moving too slowly." I took a breath. The words tasted like bile. And then she screamed at me, said I was embarrassing her in front of her real parents. I let that sink in. Her real parents, I repeated the absurdity of it bitter on my tongue. The ones who spent the entire dinner reminding me I was a poor, retired mailman. The ones who looked at me like I was something they'd stepped in. I finally took a sip. The burn was good. It grounded me. She has no idea what she's done, Nate. Anita said, her voice soft but laced with steel. Oh, she has no idea about any of it, I replied. I finally looked up from the glass and met her eyes. Anita, I've been a fool. For 2 years. 2 solid years I've been funding that entire fantasy life of hers. I paid the $8,000 a month for that glass box they call a penthouse. I paid the lease on that ridiculous BMW Chad drives. I paid the $25,000 tuition for my grandson's preschool, the one they brag about. I set the glass down. I paid for the clothes on their backs, the groceries they order, the trips they take. I leaned forward, the anger not hot but cold and heavy. And $192,000, Anita. That's what I've given them in 24 months. $192,000. And the worst part, I said, the part that keeps me awake at night, is that they didn't even know it was me. They thought it was him. They thought, I said with a bitter laugh, that Chad was some kind of financial genius. He told Brenda it was all from his executive bonus account. His bonus. He told her he was a rising star at his firm. Anita was quiet for a long moment. She slid another thicker file across the desk. Nate, she said gently, we need to talk about that bonus account. You need to know what you've really been funding. I frowned. What do you mean? I ran the full background check you authorized last month, she said. The just-in-case protocol. Chad Thompson doesn't have a bonus account, Nate. He doesn't even have a job. I felt my stomach clench. What? Chad was fired from his financial firm 2 years ago, the exact same month your assistance began. Fired? I said, my mind racing. Why, a layoff. Anita shook her head. Her eyes were full of pity, but her voice was clinical. No, he was fired for cause. He was caught embezzling Nate. $400,000 from a client's trust fund. He was a gambler. He'd lost it all. My God. I leaned back in the chair. The room felt like it was tilting. The firm didn't press charges, Anita continued, because it would have been a public scandal. They hushed it up. They made him sign a non-disclosure agreement and forced him into restitution. But the district attorney's office has been quietly building a criminal case against him ever since. He isn't just a failure, Nate. He's a felon in waiting. I was speechless. The man my daughter married, the man living off my money, a common thief. So the $8,000 a month, I whispered, it wasn't just for rent. It was for hush money. It was for everything, Anita said. He was and is completely desperate. He has no income, no prospects. You weren't just funding their lifestyle, Nate. You were funding his silence. I stood up. I walked to the window. The city lights seemed to mock me. And his parents, Richard and Beverly, the ones with the $800 wine and the ski chalets. They know, Anita said. They know exactly who their son is. She opened the final file. I ran their financials too, she said. The Thompsons are a house of cards. Richard's investments were all bad bets. They're leveraged to the hilt. They're facing 6 lawsuits from creditors. They are, to put it plainly, completely and utterly bankrupt. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The dinner, the snobbery, the insults, it was all a performance. They weren't just being arrogant, I realized. They were terrified. They were, Anita confirmed. They saw Brenda as their lifeline, or more accurately, they saw you. They thought their son had married into quiet old money. They were pressuring Chad to get more from you to get you to sell your house to sign over your assets. I turned back from the window. The blood on my forehead had dried. The pain in my hip was a dull throb, but it was nothing compared to this. So, I said, the final horrible truth settling over me. That push, last night, that wasn't just my daughter being an impatient, spoiled brat. Anita Jackson looked me straight in the eye. No, Nate, she said, her voice filled with a terrible, cold certainty. That was an attempt. They weren't just trying to get you out of the way for the evening. They were trying to get you out of the way for good. I stood at that window for a long time. The city lights blurred. I thought of Anne-Marie. I thought of the bright, funny little girl Brenda used to be. The one who would run to me with a scraped knee, trusting me to fix it. Where did she go? When did she become a person who could stand and watch her father bleed? When did she become a person who would plan for him to fall? The sadness was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. But beneath it, the ice was spreading. The man they thought I was, the simple mailman, he might have been hurt. He might have been confused. But the man standing in this suite, the man who had built an empire in silence, he was not confused. He was at war. I turned back to Anita. The scotch was still in my hand, untouched. "I've been too merciful, Anita." My voice was quiet, but the tone made her look up. "All this time," I said, "I've been protecting her, from him, from his parents, from her own bad decisions. I thought I was being a father." I placed the glass on the desk. "I was just being an enabler. I was their safety net, and they just cut it." I looked her straight in the eye. "We're not just freezing the accounts, we're collecting." For the first time that night, Anita Jackson smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a surgeon who has just been given the green light to operate. "I was hoping you'd say that, Nate," she said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out another much thinner file. "These," she said, "are the digital promissory notes Brenda and Chad electronically signed every time they accepted an executive bonus transfer." My eyebrows rose. "You had them sign promissory notes?" "Of course," Anita said, as if it were obvious. Anne-Marie's protocol was very clear. Never give a gift that looks like an income. Always make it a loan. They never read the fine print, Nate. They just clicked accept to get the money. She tapped the file. "These are ironclad. $192,000 plus interest due immediately upon demand. And as of 3:05 a.m. this morning, I have officially demanded." A new kind of silence filled the room. This was it, the next move. "They'll be served by morning," Anita said. "But Nate, you know what this means. When they get that notice, when they realize they are not just broke but deeply in debt to you, they won't just call. They will come for you." "They'll go to the house," I said. "Exactly," she replied. "They'll go to your house in the old neighborhood thinking they can intimidate you, thinking they can force the poor old mailman to back down." I shook my head. I walked over to the minibar and poured myself a simple glass of water, my hand perfectly steady. "No," I said. "They'll go to the house, but they won't find me." I took a long, slow sip. "That house," I said, "is just the bait." Anita's smile returned. "Let them go looking for a ghost." Brenda and Chad scrambled out of the yellow cab, the engine rattling as it idled impatiently at the curb. The cab ride itself had been a humiliation. Chad, who just yesterday was driving a 7 Series BMW, had to haggle with the driver, promising to pay him in cash once this is sorted out. They stood on the cracked sidewalk in front of my house. My real house. The one Brenda had grown up in. The one she hadn't brought Chad to in almost 5 years. It was a small 2-bedroom bungalow. Simple, clean, with a porch swing I still used every evening. To them, after the glass penthouse, it must have looked like a shack. But I knew something they didn't. This shack sat on a double lot in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying. The land alone was worth more than their penthouse apartment. "This is it," Chad spat, looking at the peeling paint on the porch railing with disgust. "This is where he lives." "I told you, Chad. He's simple." Brenda's voice was frantic. She ran up the walkway and started pounding on the wooden door. "Dad! Dad, open up! It's me. Brenda, we need to talk to you." The only answer was the echo of her own fist hitting the solid wood. "He's not here," Chad growled, trying the doorknob. It was locked. He walked over to a window and cupped his hands against the glass, peering into the dark living room. "It's empty. The whole place is empty. He's gone." "He can't be gone." Brenda was starting to panic, her voice rising. "Where would he go? He has nowhere else to go. Dad." She rattled the doorknob, a desperate, useless sound. Chad stepped back, his mind racing. "The old man is playing games. He's hiding. He thinks he's smart." He looked at the locked door, then at his shoulder as if calculating the cost of breaking it down. Looking for Mr. Price. The voice was slow, deep, and calm. They both spun around. Standing on the sidewalk was my neighbor, Marcus Henderson. Henderson and I had served in the same unit decades ago. He was a man built of solid oak with eyes that had seen everything and said little. He was, to put it simply, the last man on earth you ever wanted to cross. He was my oldest friend. He was wearing simple work overalls, holding a wrench as if he'd just been fixing a pipe. "Who are you?" Chad snapped, immediately defaulting to arrogance. Henderson ignored him completely. His eyes were locked on my daughter. "Brenda," he said, his voice level. "It's been a long time. You don't visit your father much anymore." Brenda flushed a mix of shame and impatience. "Mr. Henderson, yes, hi, have you seen my dad? It's an emergency. We really need to talk to him." "An emergency," Henderson repeated, not as a question but as a statement. He slowly wiped his hands on a rag, his gaze never leaving her face. "He knew you'd be coming." "He did," Brenda said, a flicker of hope in her voice. "Is he here? Is he inside?" "No," Henderson said simply. "He's gone. He left late last night. Looked like he was in a hurry. Had a nasty cut on his head." He saw Brenda flinch. He knew. Of course he knew. I had called him right after I called Anita. "But," Henderson continued, reaching into the pocket of his overalls, "he asked me to give this to you. Said you'd be by." He held out a single plain white envelope. It just had one word written on the front in my neat, clear handwriting. "Brenda." Chad lunged for it, but Henderson moved his hand just out of reach. His eyes still locked on my daughter. He held it out to her, and only her. Brenda's hand trembled as she took the envelope. It felt thin, too thin to contain money, too light to be a set of keys. She looked at Henderson, then at the envelope. "What is this?" she whispered. "He didn't say," Henderson replied. "He just said it was the first invoice." He turned without another word and walked slowly back to his own house, leaving them standing on the sidewalk, the cab driver honking impatiently behind them. Brenda's hands were shaking. The cab driver was yelling at them to pay the fare, but Chad just waved him off, and the driver, seeing Chad's face, wisely decided to wait. The envelope was thin, too thin. Brenda tore it open, a desperate ripping sound in the quiet street. She was praying for cash, a check, a key to a safe deposit box, anything. A single folded piece of paper fell onto the dusty ground. She snatched it up. "What is it?" Chad demanded, grabbing her arm. "Is it money?" "No," Brenda whispered, her eyes scanning the page. It's an invoice." "An invoice?" Chad ripped the paper from her grasp. "What the hell is he paying bills for now?" He stared at the document. "Reliable Roofing Solutions," he read aloud. "Job completed. Total balance, $15,000. He flipped the paper over. A big red rubber stamp crossed the bottom of the page. "Paid in full." Brenda just stared. $15,000, she whispered. The number did not make any sense. 15,000. Where did he get that? He's on a fixed income. He lives on his old pension. He's a retired mailman. The reality of her father, the one she had carefully curated in her mind, the one she used as her excuse, was cracking. He always said he had no savings. He said he gave me everything he had. He was lying. Chad was not listening. He was not looking at the invoice anymore. He was looking at the house. He was looking at the cracked paint, the overgrown yard, and the brand new expensive architectural shingles on the roof. "Who cares?" Chad said, his voice a low, excited growl. "Who cares where he got the money for the roof? Don't you see what this means?" "It means he lied to me," Brenda cried. "It means he has money," Chad shouted, grabbing her face. "It means he had money. And where do you think the rest of it is? It's in this." He slapped the side of the house. He was looking past the small bungalow. He was looking at the trendy coffee shop 3 blocks down. He was looking at the new condos being built on the next street over. This neighborhood was exploding. "That old fool," Chad laughed, a real, genuine laugh of discovery. "He was sitting on a gold mine. This land, Brenda. This lot is worth $1 million, maybe 2. He did not hesitate. He pulled out his phone, his hands moving quickly. "What are you doing?" Brenda asked, still reeling from the invoice. "I'm calling my realtor, Steven, the guy who tried to sell us the Hampton house. He knows this area." He put the phone to his ear, his foot tapping impatiently on the sidewalk. "Yeah, Steven Chad Thompson here. Listen, I've got a hot property for you. Prime lot in the old district. Yeah, that district. My father-in-law's place. He's out of the picture. We need a fast cash sale. How quick can you check the title and get it listed? He paced the sidewalk, a predator who had just found a new scent. I don't care what you have to do, move it. I want an offer by tonight. Yes, tonight. He hung up, a triumphant, ugly smile spreading across his face. He looked at Brenda, who was still holding the impossible invoice. You see, he said, grabbing her. It's all fine. That old man just made us rich. Chad was practically vibrating with adrenaline. He had solved it. He was a genius. He had turned this disaster into a victory. He even paid the cab driver with a smug, "Wait right here. I'll give you a big tip when the wire transfer comes through." He and Brenda sat on the porch steps, the peeling paint scratching her legs, but she did not care. $1 million. The phone rang. It was the realtor. Chad answered it, putting it on speaker so Brenda could hear the good news. "Stephen, that was fast. Did you get it listed? What's the starting bid?" There was a pause on the other end, a strange clinical silence. "Mr. Thompson." Stephen, the realtor's voice sounded completely different. Not slick, not salesy. He sounded nervous. "Mr. Thompson, I can't list this property." Chad's smile froze. What do you mean you can't? It's a house, just sell it." "No, sir, you don't understand," Stephen said. "I ran the title search as you requested. This property, it does not belong to Nathaniel Price." Brenda's head snapped up. "What? That's impossible," Chad barked into the phone. "He's lived here for 40 years. Who else would own it?" "I'm just telling you what the county records say, sir," Stephen said. "The title for this property, and in fact the entire parcel of land, was transferred 10 years ago. It's held by a private trust." "A trust?" Chad repeated the word, sounding foreign. "What trust? Who controls it?" Let me read this. It's called the Anne Marie Price Trust." Brenda felt the air leave her lungs. It was as if she had been pushed hard right in the chest. "Anne Marie," she whispered the name, feeling strange on her tongue. "My mother, but she's dead. She died 10 years ago." "I know, ma'am," the realtor said, his voice full of apology now. "But the trust is active, and the trustee is not Mr. Price. I'm sorry I can't help you. This house is locked up tighter than Fort Knox." The call ended. Chad slowly lowered the phone. The smug, triumphant look was gone. He looked terrified. Brenda just sat there on the broken steps of the house she grew up in. "Mom," she said to the empty air. "A trust. What trust?" I sat in that suite for a long time, just staring at the city. The sun was high now. A beautiful, clear morning. The kind of morning that makes you feel alive. Unless you were my daughter. I thought about Brenda sitting in that dark, cold penthouse. I thought about the panic, the fear, the confusion. It was a cruel thing to do to your only child. But then I thought about the sound of my head hitting the drywall. I thought about the sound of their laughter as they walked away, and I knew I wasn't being cruel. I was being just. "They'll be desperate," I said to Anita. She was standing by the window looking down at the street. "They're already past desperate, Nate. They're cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous." She turned to face me. The pity was gone from her eyes, replaced by that sharp, analytical focus I had relied on for 30 years. "When you called me from the loading dock last night," she said, "you were in shock, but you were also clear. You said, 'Find out why.'" "I thought I knew why," I said. My voice was rough. "Chad's a failed gambler. His parents are broke. They're leeches, parasites. They wanted my money." "It's worse than that, Nate." She walked back to the desk and opened a new file. A file I hadn't seen before. It was bound in black leather. I put my best private investigator on them immediately. The just-in-case protocol Anne-Marie insisted we create. My late wife. Always 3 steps ahead. The investigator has been tailing Richard and Beverly Thompson since 4 a.m. this morning, after they left your old house, after they discovered the trust. They drove straight to a diner in Queens to meet Chad. "They're panicking," I said. It wasn't a question. "They're planning," Anita corrected me. "Nate, they are not just bankrupt, they are desperate. And desperate people don't just back down, they double down. She slid a small digital audio recorder across the polished surface of the desk. It looked heavy, dangerous. My investigator put a bug in their car before they even got to the diner. He recorded their entire conversation. I looked at the small black device. I didn't want to hear it, but I knew I had to. Anita pressed the play button. The speakers hissed. I heard the faint sound of clattering plates, a waitress asking for a coffee order. And then I heard Richard Thompson's voice. That booming, arrogant voice I'd heard last night. But the arrogance was gone. It was replaced by a low, desperate, rat-like hiss. "The house is a bust," Richard's voice crackled. The old man locked it all up. The trust, that damned smart-mouthed wife of his, locked it all up from the grave. Then Beverly. Her voice wasn't smooth and cultured now, it was shrill, panicked. "So, what do we do? Richard, Chad, what do we do? We're ruined. That loan shark is going to break your father's legs. He's going to find me." Then my son-in-law, Chad. "Shut up, both of you," he growled. "Let me think." There was a long, terrible silence on the recording. Just the sound of a spoon stirring coffee scraping the side of the cup, again and again. "He cut us off," Chad said finally. "The rent, the cards, the car. He's trying to ruin us. He's trying to ruin Brenda." Then Richard's voice colder this time. "He's not trying, son. He did. Unless—" "Unless what?" Chad snapped. "Unless," Richard said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "Brenda isn't just his daughter, unless she becomes his sole heir." My hands gripped the arms of the leather chair. My knuckles went white. I knew before he even said it what was coming next. Beverly's voice was a gasp. "What are you saying, Richard? He's in a hotel. He's hidden. We don't even know where he is." "He's an old man." Richard's voice was suddenly full of energy. 72. He had a fall last night. He hit his head. Old men are fragile, Beverly. They get confused. They have accidents. All the time. I could hear Chad breathing on the recording. A slow, heavy sound. "An accident," Chad repeated. "A simple slip and fall." Richard said, his voice quickening, the plan forming. "On a wet sidewalk. Maybe down a flight of stairs at that fancy hotel. A tragic accident. He hits his head again, this time harder." "Oh my God," Beverly whispered. "Don't oh my God me, Beverly," Richard snapped. "It's him or us. If he dies, Brenda gets everything. The trust, the house, those hidden accounts. And if she gets everything, we get everything. We are saved. Chad is saved." Then Chad spoke. His voice was the one that broke me. It was calm. It was logical. "He has a life insurance policy," Chad said. "I saw it when I helped him with his simple finances 6 months ago. $1 million. Brenda is the only beneficiary." $1 million? I didn't have $1 million life insurance policy. I had a small $50,000 policy, just for burial expenses. "Where did he—" Oh no. "Anita," I whispered, my voice hoarse, interrupting the recording. "Check my policies. My life insurance. Now." Anita was already typing on her laptop. Her face, which had been stone, went pale. "Nate," she said, her voice shaking for the first time. "A new $1 million term life policy was taken out in your name 6 months ago. The beneficiary is Brenda. The premium was paid from a secondary account." "It looks like," she whispered, "Chad forged your digital signature to authorize it. They weren't just planning to kill me, they had been setting the stage for months." I looked at the recorder. "Play the rest," I commanded. Anita pressed the button. Richard's voice was triumphant. "It's perfect. The old man is confused. He's been wandering. He's unstable. He falls. He dies. Brenda is devastated. We, her loving, supportive family, we comfort her. We help her manage her new sudden inheritance." "We just have to find him," Chad said. "We will," Richard promised. "And when we do, we finish what Brenda started." Anita pressed stop. The silence in that suite was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. "They're not just leeches," I said. The words felt like gravel in my mouth. "They're murderers." "They are," Anita confirmed. "And Nate, now that you've cut off their money, you've taken away their last reason to be patient. You are no longer their piggy bank. She looked me dead in the eye. You are just the obstacle. I could feel the blood draining from my face, a cold rush that had nothing to do with the air conditioning in the suite. That recording. Richard's voice. Finish what Brenda started. Beverly's voice. A tragic accident. Chad's voice. $1 million. I looked down at the small, dark cut on my hand, the one I got when my glasses shattered on the marble. That push, I said to Anita. My voice was a hoarse whisper. Last night, that wasn't just impatience. It wasn't just her being a spoiled brat. I finally understood. It was a test. Wasn't it? They were testing to see how fragile I was, to see if I would break. Anita didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes filled with a deep, weary sadness said it all. She had known. She had known because Anne-Marie had known. My late wife, my Anne-Marie, she wasn't just my partner for 45 years. She was the smartest woman I ever met. She wasn't just a homemaker. She was a brilliant, sharp, uncompromising financial analyst. She could read a quarterly report and find the lie in it in under 30 seconds. And she could read people even faster. She had adored our daughter. She loved Brenda with a fierceness that sometimes scared me. But she was never blind to her. She saw the flaw in her, the one I had always tried to paper over the one I had always tried to fix. She has a good heart, Nate. Anne-Marie used to tell me long before she got sick. We'd be sitting on the porch of our little house watching a teenage Brenda get ready for a date. She has a good heart, but her spine is made of straw. She will always be drawn to the shiniest object in the room. She needs approval more than she needs air. And one day a man is going to come along who promises her the world, and she will let him burn ours down just to feel the warmth. I thought she was being cynical. I thought she was being too hard on her. I was wrong. The day Brenda introduced us to Chad, I saw a salesman, a guy with a fake smile, a rented watch, and too much cologne. Anne-Marie saw a parasite. He's a leech, Nate, she had told me that night after they left. He doesn't love her. He's using her. He can smell her weakness. He can smell our stability. She was already sick by then. The cancer was fast, but her mind was clear. In those last few weeks, she wasn't just preparing to die. She was preparing me. She was preparing for this day. She saw him. I whispered, my voice thick. She saw this. 10 years ago, she saw this exact day happening. She more than saw it, Nate, Anita said quietly, her voice full of respect. She planned for it. She built the fortress, the Anne-Marie Price Trust. It was her final brilliant act. She took every penny of her own money, her inheritance from her parents, her own investment portfolio, her retirement. She even put the house, our little house, in it. She put it all into an ironclad, irrevocable trust. She locked it away. I was the trustee. The simple retired mailman was the gatekeeper. Brenda and Chad thought my little house was my only asset. They thought my pension was my only income. They had no idea that house was just a piece of paper, a single line item in a $5 million portfolio, a portfolio that by all rights should have been Brenda's. But the will, I said, remembering the document I had signed, my hand shaking the day after her funeral. The die chap tear. The will was a masterpiece, Anita said, already pulling the document from that ominous black folder. She had a copy of everything. Anne-Marie was a brilliant woman, but she was not a forgiving one. She was just. She laid out 2 conditions for Brenda to inherit. Only 2. I remembered them like they were burned into my memory. Clause 4, Section B, Anita read, though she didn't need to. The beneficiary, Brenda Price Thompson, shall be immediately and irrevocably disinherited if she, 1, enters into a legal marriage with an individual whom the trustee Nathaniel Price formally disapproves of in writing, citing clear evidence of financial or moral instability. I never used it. I said mostly to myself. I couldn't. How do you do that to your own child? How do you tell her the man she loves is a fraud even when you know he is? I looked at Anita, my chest aching with an old, familiar guilt. I thought I could manage it. I thought if I just helped them, if I paid their rent, paid their car, if I took away the stress of money, that maybe Chad would straighten up, that maybe Brenda would be happy. I kept hoping Anne-Marie was wrong. You were being a father, Anita said gently. You were trying to fix a problem she had already solved. I was a fool, I said, and I was weak. I should have used the claws. It doesn't matter, Nate, Anita said, turning the page. Because you were weak, Anne-Marie was strong. She gave you 2 keys to lock the door. You didn't use the first one. She tapped the paper. So she left you a second. I closed my eyes. I knew what was coming. The clause I never ever thought would be spoken of again. Clause 4, Section C. Anita read, her voice cold and clear, cutting through the silence of the suite. Also known, she added, as the Judas Clause. Brenda will be disinherited. She read, if she, quote, engages in any action, financial or physical, that brings intentional malicious harm, disrepute, or physical danger to the family legacy, or to the person of the trustee. The words hung in the air: intentional malicious harm, physical danger, to the person of the trustee. She pushed me down the stairs, I whispered. She pushed you down the stairs, Anita confirmed, her voice flat. She stood by and listened while her in-laws and her husband plotted my accidental death. She stood by and listened. All that greed, all that planning, all that scheming to get an inheritance. I looked at Anita, the blood pounding in my head. My God, does she realize? She has no idea, Anita said. They are fighting, scheming, and possibly planning to murder you for an inheritance that she already lost. The second she put her hands on you last night, she disinherited herself, legally. Irrevocably. It's done. I was speechless. The sheer perfect tragic irony of it. So, I said, my mind trying to catch up. If Brenda is out, who gets it? Who gets it all now? Anita's question hung in the air, heavy and absolute. So, Nate, if Brenda is officially and irrevocably disinherited, who gets it all? Who is the contingent beneficiary? A smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was cold. It was the smile of a man who had just seen a 45-year-long chess game come to an end. It was Anne-Marie's smile. Anne-Marie was meticulous, I said, my voice quiet. She never left a loose end. She always said, Nate, never leave a fortune to just one person. Always have a backup. Always reward character, not just blood. I looked past Anita at the wall, but I was seeing a memory. A memory of Brenda, just last year, planning her extravagant, over-the-top wedding. The one I paid for, though she thought Chad did. I remembered her going over the guest list. She had a red pen striking out names with vicious little slashes. Who's this? She had asked, her nose wrinkled in disgust. Keisha Price. Oh, Dad, no. We are not inviting her. Keisha? I had asked, surprised. That's your cousin. That's my sister's girl. I don't care, Brenda had snapped. She's poor. She's a third-grade teacher in the Bronx. What is she going to wear rags? What are we going to talk to her about? She'll make Chad's parents uncomfortable. She'll make me uncomfortable. She is not coming. I remembered the finality in her voice, the absolute casual cruelty of it. I turned my gaze back to Anita. The contingent beneficiary, I said, savoring every word, is Keisha Price, my sister's daughter. I let the name settle in the room. Brenda's poor cousin, I said. The one she refused to invite to her wedding. The one she called rags behind her back. The one who has spent the last 10 years teaching in an inner-city school, working 2 extra jobs just to pay off her student loans, never asking anyone for a dime. Anita's professional mask slipped. Her eyes widened, and then a slow, admiring smile spread across her face. Anne-Marie, she whispered. That magnificent, brilliant woman. Yes, I said. Anne-Marie always loved Keisha. She said Keisha had a spine of steel. She said Keisha was the one who had her blood in her, not Brenda. I stood up and walked back to the window. The trap was set. The bait was in the water, and the players were all moving exactly as Anne-Marie had predicted. Brenda and Chad are out there right now trying to sell a house that doesn't belong to them, I said. Richard and Beverly are in a diner plotting to murder a man who is already 2 steps ahead of them. They are all fighting over an inheritance, I whispered, that my daughter just handed over with her own 2 hands to the one person on earth she despises most. I was in my suite. They were in hell, a hell of their own making. A $300 a week motel room off the interstate with thin walls and the smell of stale cigarettes and mildew. When the bank sealed that penthouse, they didn't just lose their home. They lost their identity. I know exactly how that scene played out. My daughter Brenda would have been sitting on the edge of a stained mattress, her expensive clothes piled in a heap on the dirty floor. She would be crying the ugly snot-nosed crying of a child who has finally been told no. And Chad, her husband, he would be pacing back and forth in the 3 feet of space between the bed and the humming empty mini-fridge. A caged, worthless animal. You did this. I can hear his voice, a venomous, desperate whisper. Your father, your crazy, vindictive, lying old man. He cut us off. He ruined us. And Brenda, my daughter, would have screamed back, her voice raw. Me. You did this. You were the one who got fired. You were the one who lied to me for 2 years. You told me you were a genius, Chad. You told me you were making millions. We were going to be rich, he would have yelled. That house was ours. That inheritance was yours. You just had to handle him. One little push down the stairs, and you couldn't even do that right. I didn't know he was made of glass, she'd sob. How was I supposed to know? The thin walls would have done nothing to muffle their fight. But the real pressure wasn't just inside that room. It was coming through the phone. I know Chad's phone rang. I know he looked at the caller ID. Richard, his father. He would have tried to compose himself, to put on his voice of fake authority. Dad, he'd say, listen, there's just been a small complication. The old man, he's playing some kind of game. He's locked up the assets. I knew Richard Thompson. He was not an understanding man. He was a man drowning, and he was perfectly willing to pull his own son under with him. I can hear Richard's voice, not booming with arrogance now, but thin and reedy with pure terror, screaming through that cheap speaker. Games, that loan shark, the one you got us involved with, just called me. He gives me 48 hours, Chad, 48 hours before he sends his men to collect. And he doesn't want money, son. He wants kneecaps. Dad, I just need time, Chad would plead. You fix this, Richard would be roaring. You get that old man's money, or so help me God. I will tell those men where to find you. Instead, I am not going down for you, you useless coward. The line would go dead. Click. Chad would be shaking. He would look at Brenda, his eyes wide. This was no longer about a penthouse. This was no longer about pride. This was about survival. And then, as if on cue, Brenda's phone would ring. Beverly, her mother-in-law. Brenda would answer, her voice trembling. Beverly, please, it's just a misunderstanding. My dad is just confused. I can fix this. But Beverly, the woman who last night pretended to be a queen, would show her true colors. Fix this. You useless common girl, you had one job. You were supposed to secure this family. You married a fraud, and now you have failed us. If my husband goes down for this, you are coming down with us. Do you hear me, Brenda? You are nothing. Click. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence in that cheap motel room. Just the rumble of a truck passing on the highway outside. They had nothing. No money, no home, no cars, no allies. And they had just been threatened directly by the very people they had tried so desperately to impress. This was the bottom. This was the moment of absolute despair. The moment I had been waiting for. They sat there for a long time. I know they did. The reality of their situation was a physical weight crushing the air from their lungs. They were out of options. And that is when I sent them the hook. Brenda's phone, which she had thrown onto the dirty bedspread, lit up. A single quiet beep. She would have ignored it. It was just another creditor. Another payment failed alert. But then it lit up again. An email notification. She would have picked it up, her eyes dull. The subject line was simple. Transaction receipt. She opened it. It was not a warning. It was not a bill. It was a receipt. A digital receipt in bright, cheerful colors. Thank you for your purchase. $5,000. The Emporium gift shop, the Four Seasons Hotel. Brenda would have stared at it. $5,000. Her voice would be a whisper. Chad would snatch the phone from her hand. He would read the message. His eyes, dead and panicked seconds before, would suddenly light up with a new, terrible energy. He's there, Chad whispered. The Four Seasons. That's where he is. Brenda, still lost, would ask, why is he spending $5,000? He doesn't have that kind of money. And Chad would start to laugh, a low, dry, ugly sound from the back of his throat. "Don't you get it?" he'd say, his voice shaking with a new kind of rage. "He's not just spending it, you idiot. He's flaunting it. He's mocking us." He held the phone up to her face. "That old broke, pathetic mailman," he hissed. "He has money. He has all the money. And he's sitting in a $5,000 a night hotel laughing at us." Brenda looked at the receipt. Then she looked at her husband's face. They didn't think about apologizing. They didn't think about begging. Their desperation and humiliation had just found a target. Their terror had just turned into pure, undiluted rage. They were coming. And I was waiting. I knew they were cornered. I knew they were desperate. What I didn't know was what kind of animals they were. Were they the kind that when trapped would whimper and beg for forgiveness? Or were they the kind that would sharpen their claws and try to tear their way out? I got my answer 10 minutes later. I can hear Chad's voice in that motel room even now. I can hear the sound of the phone hitting the wall. That $5,000 receipt wasn't a clue. It was a declaration of war. "He's there!" he would have roared, his voice cracking. "That lying, miserable old bastard. He's at the Four Seasons. He's spending our money." "Our money," Brenda would have whispered, still not understanding. "Yes, ours." Chad would be screaming, pacing that tiny room like a lunatic. That house, that trust, that $15,000 roof. He has millions. He's been sitting on millions dressed in his stupid old man clothes, pretending to be a mailman, He's been laughing at us. He's been laughing at me. This was the moment, the turning point. A person with a conscience, a person with a soul would have felt shame. They would have felt remorse. They would have realized the depth of their own greed. But not Chad, not Brenda. They didn't feel shame. They felt cheated. They felt entitled. I can see my daughter's face, the tears of self-pity drying, being replaced by something else, something hard and ugly, the humiliation from last night, her in-laws laughing, her father bleeding on the carpet. That wasn't shame to her, that was an insult. And now the money she'd been told was hers. The money she was owed was being spent by that same man at a gift shop. "He owes us," she would have said, her voice low and trembling with a new kind of energy, a hateful energy. "He owes me." "Brenda, what are you talking about?" Chad would have asked, his own rage pausing, intrigued by hers. "He embarrassed me," she would say, standing up, her fists clenched. "He let those people, my family, treat him like trash. He let me be humiliated. He let me beg. He let me push him. He planned this. He wanted us to show our true colors. He made me look like a fool." "He did," Chad agreed, seeing his opening. "He made us both look like fools." "He's not going to get away with it," Brenda would hiss. "He's not just going to cut us off and laugh. That money is mine. I am his only child. That house is mine. He owes me for last night. He owes me for all of it." They weren't going to apologize. They weren't coming to beg. They were coming to collect. I can see them in that dirty motel room, their faces flushed with rage and righteousness. They were no longer victims of a bad economy. They were heroes on a mission of justice. "We're going there," Chad would say, grabbing his coat. "What about the money for the cab?" Brenda would ask, the practical fear still there. "We use the last of it," he'd say. "This is it. We go there, we confront him. We tell him we know about his lies. We tell him we're not leaving until he gives us what's ours. We'll make a scene. We'll tell everyone what he did. He can't hide from us." They grabbed the last few crumpled bills they had. They left the room, slamming the door. They didn't have their BMW anymore, so they stood on the side of the highway, two enraged, desperate people hailing a taxi. They were on their way to the Four Seasons. They thought they were the hunters. They thought they were finally going to corner the poor old mailman. They had no idea they were walking willingly into the center of the trap I had set just for them. And I was waiting. The elevator doors to the presidential suite dinged. It wasn't a loud sound, but in the quiet of that room, it was an explosion. Anita, who was reviewing a document, looked up at me. I just nodded. I had told hotel security to expect them. I had told them to let them up. A trapped animal is most dangerous when it thinks there is no way out. I was giving them a door, but it was a door to my cage, not to their freedom. The doors slid open and they practically fell into the room. Brenda and Chad. They didn't knock. They didn't pause. They stormed in, propelled by that cheap motel room rage. Their faces were red, their clothes wrinkled from a night of panic. They looked like what they were, desperate, furious, and completely out of their depth. Brenda's eyes were wild. "Dad," she screamed, pointing a finger at me. You can't." Chad was right behind her, his chest puffed up, ready for a fight. "You lying old man," he snarled. "You're going to pay for—" And then they stopped. Both of them, dead in their tracks just inside the marble foyer of the suite. They hadn't been expecting this. They had been expecting the poor old mailman. They had been expecting the small, scared old man in the wrinkled blazer they had pushed down the stairs. They were ready to yell at him, to bully him, to corner him in a tacky hotel room. They were not expecting me. I was not standing. I was sitting calmly in a high-backed leather armchair. I was not wearing my old slacks. I was wearing a $3,000 custom-tailored suit, dark charcoal wool, the kind of suit that whispers, not shouts. My wound was neatly bandaged. My glasses were not my old wire rims, but a new modern pair. I hadn't said a word. I just looked at them, and I was not alone. To my right sat Anita Jackson in her sharp corporate suit, her hands folded neatly on top of a stack of black leather-bound legal files. To my left sat two other men Brenda and Chad had never seen before, our corporate attorneys. They wore the same expression of quiet, expensive disinterest. And in the far corners of the room, standing almost in the shadows, were two very large, very calm men in dark suits. My security detail. This was not a hotel room. This was a boardroom. And they had just stormed into a meeting they were not invited to. Brenda's pointed finger wavered. The word pay died in Chad's throat. The color drained from their faces. The cheap, hot rage was instantly replaced by a cold, confusing dread. They looked around at the vast suite, at the lawyers, at the silent security men, and then finally back at me. I hadn't moved. Brenda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Dad," she finally whispered. Her voice was no longer a scream. It was the small, terrified voice of a child who had just walked into the wrong room and found something she was never supposed to see. "Brenda," I said. My voice was just as quiet, but it filled the room. "Chad, thank you for coming. Please close the door. We have a lot to discuss." Brenda's accusation echoed in the magnificent room. "You lied to me." She was pointing at me, her finger shaking. All the fear was gone, replaced by the hot, blind rage of the entitled. "All these years you let me think you were poor. You deceived me." I just sat there. I let her scream. I let her empty herself of all that righteous fury. I looked at her. "Lied," I finally said. "That's the word you choose, Brenda." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence in that suite was absolute. "I didn't lie, Brenda. You just never asked. You assumed." "What does it matter?" she shrieked. "This is a game you're playing, some kind of sick, twisted game." "No," a new voice said. Anita Jackson stood up. She was magnificent. She was a tall, sharp woman, and she commanded the room in a way my daughter, with all her screaming, never could. "This is not a game, Ms. Price Thompson. This is an audit." Brenda and Chad both stared at her, confused. "You accuse your father of lying," Anita said, her voice cutting through the air. "Let's talk about lies. Let's talk about the executive bonus account your husband, Mr. Thompson, claimed to have." Chad tensed. I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. "I don't know who you are," he snarled, "but our finances are private." "Not when they're funded by my client," Anita said, not even looking at him. She was focused entirely on Brenda. "Your father didn't lie to you, Brenda. You just preferred his lie. You were too busy spending to ask a single question." Anita picked up the first, thickest file from the stack. "You seem to believe your father is a poor, retired mailman. Let's look at the lifestyle of this poor man's daughter." She opened the file. $8,000 every single month for 24 months, paid directly to the management company of your penthouse. Brenda stammered. That was Chad's. That was his bonus. He told me." "No," Anita said, her voice flat and cold. "It was your father's generosity. He was paying your rent." I watched the color drain from Brenda's face. "What about the BMW 7 Series?" Anita continued, relentless. $2,000 a month. Also, your father. The $25,000 tuition for Noah's private preschool, your father. Your American Express supplementary card. Your Saks Fifth Avenue account. Your grocery delivery service." Anita paused, letting the words hang in the air. For 2 years, Brenda, you have been living a complete fantasy. A fantasy funded entirely by the man you pushed down a flight of stairs last night. I watched my daughter. She was looking at Chad now, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. Anita closed the file with a soft final thud. He has paid, she said, a total of $192,000 to maintain your lifestyle. He didn't lie to you. He subsidized you. The room was silent. Brenda looked like she couldn't breathe. Chad was the first to find his voice. He was a cornered rat, and he saw only one way out attack. So what? He scoffed, his face red. He's her father. It's a gift. A father is supposed to take care of his family. He owes her that. Owes her. The arrogance. Even now, Anita's smile was thin and terrifying. A gift, she repeated. Mr. Thompson, my client, is a logistician. He is meticulous. He never makes an unsecured transaction. This was the part I was waiting for. You told your wife, Anita said, picking up a second, thinner file, that these funds were executive bonuses deposited into a joint account. You had her digitally accept the transfer each month. It's a family matter, Chad snarled. It's a legal matter, Anita corrected. You see, every time you and your wife clicked accept on that transfer, you also accepted the terms of the document attached, a document you clearly never bothered to read. My wife, Anne-Marie. She had insisted on it. Parasites never read the fine print, Nate, she had said. As always, she was right. Anita slid a single piece of paper across the desk. This, she said, is a copy of the electronic promissory note you both signed. 24 times. Brenda lunged forward and grabbed the paper. Her lips moved silently as she read. Brenda Price Thompson, agree to accept this amount as a personal loan, repayable upon demand. She dropped the paper as if it had burned her. $192,000, Anita said, her voice echoing in the suite, plus accrued interest, and Ms. Price Thompson, Mr. Thompson, as of 3:05 a.m. this morning, my client has officially and legally demanded repayment, in full. If Brenda was pale before, she was a ghost now. The reality hit her. She wasn't just cut off. She wasn't just broke. You are $192,000 in debt, Anita stated. We expect payment by the end of the business day tomorrow, or we will begin proceedings to seize all assets. Chad just laughed. It was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. Seize what? We have nothing. You just took it all. You can't get blood from a stone, you old fool. He pointed at me, his face a mask of rage. But Brenda. She stood up straight. The fear was gone, replaced by a desperate, familiar calculation. The house, she said, her voice shaking but firm. Chad looked at her confused. What? The house, she yelled, pointing at me. Your little mailman shack. It's mine. I am your only child. You can't take that from me. We will sell that house and we will pay you with your own money. There it was, the final ugly truth. My home was just a bank account to her. I finally spoke. My voice was quiet and it cut through her screaming. No, Brenda. Yes, she shrieked. The lawyer on the phone said it. It's in a trust, Mom's trust. It's family property. I'm the beneficiary. You were, I said. I watched her face freeze. That house, Brenda, I said, standing up and walking slowly toward her, and every other penny your mother left was protected. It was protected by a woman who saw this day coming 10 years ago. I looked at Anita. She held up the next file. The Anne-Marie Price Trust was a masterpiece. I told my daughter, my voice filled with the sadness of this final act. It had conditions, rules. Your mother was a brilliant woman. She knew you were weak. She knew you were drawn to men like him. I gestured to Chad. So she put in a rule. Clause 4, Section B. It stated that you would be the sole beneficiary, unless you married a man I, as the trustee, formally disapproved of in writing, citing clear evidence of financial or moral instability. But you didn't, Brenda cried. You came to the wedding. You smiled. I know, I said. I was a fool. I thought I could protect you. I thought I could fix him by giving him money. I didn't use that clause. I was weak. But your mother was strong. I paused. This was the killing blow. Because she put in a second rule, Brenda. Clause 4, Section C, the Judas Clause. She specified that you would be immediately and irrevocably disinherited if you ever engaged in any action that brought intentional, malicious harm or physical danger to me. I just looked at her. I didn't need to say more. She knew. She remembered. "The moment you put your hands on me last night, Brenda," I said, my voice breaking with the finality of it. "The second you pushed me, you gave it all away." She just shook her head, whispering, "No, no, no." Chad was the one who laughed, a broken, ugly sound. "A trap," he wheezed. "A ridiculous, petty trap, so what you disinherited her. Who gets it? You can't just keep it." He still thought this was about him. He still thought this was a negotiation. "You're right, Chad. I don't get it," I said. Anne-Marie was meticulous. She always rewarded character, not just blood. Brenda looked up, her eyes wide with confusion. "Character what? Who are you talking about?" "Do you remember your cousin Keisha?" I asked. The name hit her like a slap. I saw the flash of recognition followed by pure, unadulterated disgust. "Keisha," she spat. "My cousin Keisha. The one who teaches in the Bronx. The one who wears clothes from the thrift store. The one you refused to invite to your wedding," I confirmed. "The one you told me, and I quote, was poor trash and would embarrass you in front of Chad's parents. The one who just got her master's degree in special education by working 2 jobs while you were spending my money at Saks." "What about her?" Brenda hissed. "She gets it, Brenda," I said simply. The silence in the room was absolute. Anne-Marie named Keisha as the sole contingent beneficiary. "As of last night at approximately 10:30 p.m., the moment you assaulted me, the entire $5 million Anne-Marie Price Trust, all of it, legally transferred to her." Brenda made a sound, a guttural animal sound of pure agony. It wasn't just the money. It was the humiliation. It was the knowledge that everything she had schemed for, everything she had betrayed me for, was now in the hands of the one person on earth she truly believed was beneath her. She lunged at me. "I'll kill you!" she screamed. She didn't get within 5 feet. The 2 security men, silent until now, stepped forward. One of them caught her by the arms. She thrashed, but it was useless. Chad, however, didn't move to help his wife. He was looking at me. His rage was gone. He was calculating. He was a rat and the ship was sinking. He was looking for a lifeboat. "This is insane," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "You can't do this. This is family. I'll get lawyers. I'll fight this. I'll tell the world what you did." He was threatening me, even now. I didn't even look at him. I just nodded to the man on my left, Mr. Harrison, our lead attorney. Harrison stood up. He was a tall, imposing man. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice like polished gravel, "I would strongly advise against any threats." "You don't scare me," Chad blustered. "I'm not trying to," Harrison said. "I am simply advising." He slid the final black folder across the table. "You seem to be under the impression that you are a victim here. The district attorney's office, however, has a different opinion." Chad's face went from red to a sickly mottled white. "We know about the $400,000 embezzlement charge, Mr. Thompson. We know the DA has been building a case against you. We also know that my client, Mr. Price, was the only thing standing between you and a federal indictment." I watched Chad's facade crumble. "However," Harrison continued, "Mr. Price is a merciful man. He doesn't believe his daughter should be tied to a sinking ship. He has arranged a proposition." This was the final move. Harrison pulled out 2 documents. "This one," he said, tapping the first, "is a legal agreement stating that Mr. Price will not provide the DA with any additional incriminating evidence he has discovered about your creative finances. And this one," he tapped the second, "is a petition for divorce from your wife Brenda, citing irreconcilable differences. Sign both right now and you walk out that door. You will still face the DA, but you will face them alone without Mr. Price's considerable resources aimed against you." I watched him. This was the man my daughter had chosen, the man she had pushed me for. He looked at Brenda, who was still being held by security, sobbing and whispering, "Keisha, no, Keisha." He looked at the divorce papers. He looked at the lawyers. He didn't hesitate for a single second. "Give me the pen," he said. He didn't say goodbye to Brenda. He didn't even look at her again. He just signed his name, severing their marriage in 3 quick, angry strokes. "Good doing business," he muttered, throwing the pen on the table. "Get him out of my sight," I said. The security guard released my daughter, who slid to the floor, and the other guard escorted my ex-son-in-law out of the suite, a free man for now, but one who had just signed away his last and only ally. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the room with Anita, the lawyers, and my daughter, who was weeping on the floor, utterly and finally alone. This was the moment, the final test. This was the man my daughter Brenda had chosen, the man she had pushed me for, the man she had allied herself with against her own blood. Chad stood there, his chest heaving, his face slick with sweat. He looked at the divorce papers on the polished mahogany table. He looked at the 2 impassive lawyers. He looked at the security men. Then he looked at his wife. My daughter. She was still being held by the other security guard. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was just hanging. Her head was bowed. Her expensive hair was a mess, and she was whispering one word over and over again like a prayer. "Keisha, no, Keisha, no." She was a ghost. All the arrogance, the fire, the entitlement. It was gone. She was just a broken woman in a wrinkled dress. And I saw Chad's eyes. I saw the calculation. It was fast. It was cold. It was reptilian. He looked at this weeping, broken woman. He looked at this stranger his wife had become. And he saw nothing. He saw no value, no asset. He saw a liability, a broke, hysterical, useless liability, now $192,000 in debt. He had been willing to plot murder for $1 million inheritance. He was not willing to stay for a $200,000 debt. He didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. He didn't say her name. He didn't offer a single word of comfort. He didn't even look at her again. His movement was a lunge. He snatched the pen from the table. Brenda stopped whispering. She looked up, her tear-filled eyes wide with a new, final, dawning horror. She finally saw him for what he was. "Chad," she whispered. He didn't look at her. His eyes were on the paper. The only sound in that vast, silent suite was the vicious scratch, scratch, scratch of the pen as he signed his name. He severed their marriage in 3 quick, angry strokes. He threw the pen down on the table. It rolled and came to a stop next to the black folder. He smoothed his suit jacket. He actually straightened his tie. "Good doing business," he muttered, not to me, but to the lawyers. Mr. Harrison, the attorney, just nodded. "The DA will be in touch." The security guard, who wasn't holding Brenda, stepped forward and put a hand on Chad's shoulder. Chad just shrugged him off, adjusted his cuffs, and walked out of the suite, escorted. He walked out like a man who had just closed a deal, not like a man who had just abandoned his wife to face federal charges. The heavy door clicked shut. Silence. It was a terrible, absolute silence. Brenda was still standing, held up by the guard. She was no longer crying. She was just watching the door he had walked through. The guard looked at me. I nodded. He released his grip on her arms. She didn't fall right away. She just stood there for a moment, suspended in the empty space where her entire life had just been. Then she collapsed. She didn't faint. She just folded. She crumpled onto the expensive carpet, not like a person, but like a pile of rags. The poor rags she had always despised. She curled into a ball, put her face in her hands. And the sound that came out of her was not a scream. It was not a sob. It was a deep guttural animal wail of pure abject loss. It was the only sound in the room. I am not at the Four Seasons. That was a command center, a place of business, a war room. I am home. This is my real home. The one Brenda has never been invited to. The one she never even knew existed. It is a penthouse, yes. But it is not Chad's cold, sterile glass and marble box. My walls are lined with mahogany bookshelves floor to ceiling. The floors are dark, worn hardwood softened by thick Persian rugs that I bought in my travels. The air smells of old leather pipe tobacco and fresh, dark roast coffee. This apartment is not an advertisement. It is a life. It is filled with the art I have collected for over 40 years. Jacob Lawrence prints hang on the walls. Romar Bearden collages. There is soul here, my soul, Anne-Marie's soul. My desk is cluttered not with designer magazines, but with books on logistics, global economics, and a well-worn copy of The Wealth of Nations. A photograph of Anne-Marie smiling sits next to my monitor. It is the only picture I need. I never told Brenda about this place. Why would I? When she was a teenager, she was already obsessed with brand names and shiny surfaces. She saw my little bungalow, the one I kept as my official address, as a source of shame. I let her. I let her believe I was the simple mailman, the simple, retired old man. It was easier. It kept the leeches away, or so I thought. I stand in my kitchen pouring the steaming water into the French press. The smell of the coffee is rich, familiar. It calms me. The last 3 days have been a blur of lawyers' bank transfers and security briefings. The fallout from the hotel was fast and it was brutal. But this morning the apartment is quiet. The storm is over. The silence is comfortable, broken only by the drip of the coffee. Then the doorbell rings. It is not the harsh, impatient buzz of the motel or the sterile chime of the hotel. It is a soft, warm bell. I am not expecting anyone. Anita is handling the legal filings. The security team has been dismissed. Brenda is somewhere else, dealing with the consequences. I walk to the door, my bare feet silent on the thick rug. I look through the peephole, and my heart, which I thought had turned to ice, does a strange, unfamiliar flip. It's Keisha. I open the door. She's standing there looking completely lost. My sister's daughter. 30 years old, wearing a simple flannel shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She's clutching her purse like it's a life raft. She looks like she's on the verge of tears. "Uncle Nate," she says, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry to bother you." "I didn't even know you lived here. Your old number, it was disconnected," and I step aside and hold the door open. "Come in, Keisha. You are not bothering me. I've been meaning to call you." She steps inside and her eyes go wide. She's taking in the bookshelves, the high ceilings, the art, the quiet wealth. She is just as stunned as Brenda was, but I can see her expression is different. Brenda saw power and money. Keisha is seeing a life. "I don't understand," she stammers, turning to me, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "I got a call, this morning, from a lawyer, a woman named Anita Jackson, my estate planner," I say quietly. "Yes, she said she was your estate planner. She asked me to come to this address. She said you had something important to discuss with me. Uncle Nate, what is going on? Is Brenda okay? I saw some things online about her and Chad. She's a good kid, a good woman. The first thing she asks about is her cousin. The same cousin who called her poor trash. Character. Anne-Marie was right." I smile, a real smile, not the cold, sharp smile I gave Chad. "Keisha, come sit down, please. Can I get you some coffee?" It's freshly pressed. She sits on the edge of the large leather sofa, looking like a small bird in a very large nest. I hand her a warm mug. "Uncle Nate," she starts, "I don't want to be in the middle of anything. If this is about Brenda, This isn't about Brenda," I say, sitting in the armchair across from her. "This is about you, and it's about your Aunt Anne-Marie." I watch her as I let that sink in. "Keisha," I say, "I remember your college graduation, 7 years ago. I was so proud of you. I remember we were standing by the punch bowl and I asked you what your big plan was." She blinks, confused by the memory. I remember that. "You told me," I continue, "that you didn't want to be a CEO. You didn't want to be rich. You said your dream was to teach, to have a little house with a small yard, maybe adopt an old dog from the shelter. You said you just wanted enough stability to start a family of your own." Her eyes fill with tears. "I still want that, Uncle Nate, but I'm a teacher in the Bronx. I'm renting a studio apartment. I'll be paying off my master's degree until I'm 50. A house? A yard? That's not in the cards for me. That's a dream for people like, well, it's just a dream." I lean forward. "Your Aunt Anne-Marie, she left some very specific instructions in her will. She set up a trust, and in that trust, there's a house." "A house?" she whispers. "My old house," I say. "The little bungalow in the old neighborhood, the one Brenda grew up in. It's empty now. It's just sitting there. It's paid off. It's got a brand new $15,000 roof." Keisha just stares at me, the mug shaking in her hands. "Uncle Nate, I can't accept that. That's Brenda's house." "No," I say, my voice gentle but firm. "It's not. It's yours. Anne-Marie made sure of that if certain conditions were met." I don't tell her about the rest. I don't tell her about the 5 million, or the disinheritance, or the push. That's for the lawyers to handle. This is for family. She always loved you, Keisha. She always said you had a spine of steel. She said you were the one who understood what was real. Keisha is crying openly, now silent tears running down her face. But a house, I smile. I have a small empty house that I'm not using, and you need a home to start your family. It seems like a simple logical solution. I let the question hang in the air. Do you want it? Keisha just looked at me, her mind clearly struggling to process the information. But, Uncle Nate, she whispered, why? Why would Aunt Anne-Marie do this? Why would she cut Brenda out like that? It seems so cruel. I leaned back in my chair, the old leather groaning softly. I had to make her understand. I had to honor my wife's true intention. It wasn't cruelty, Keisha, I said. It was the hardest kind of love. Your Aunt Anne-Marie, she saw Brenda's heart. She knew Brenda was soft, that she craved approval, that she would attach herself to any man who promised her a shiny life. I looked at the photograph of my wife on the desk. Anne-Marie didn't set up that trust to punish Brenda. She set it up to protect her from men exactly like Chad. She knew that if Brenda had easy access to this money, she would be a target for every parasite and gambler within 100 miles. She would be eaten alive. I looked back at Keisha, my eyes firm. Your aunt didn't just want to leave Brenda money. She wanted to leave her a chance to build character. And sometimes, Keisha, sometimes true love isn't about giving someone a safety net. It's about having the courage to let them fall. It's about letting them hit rock bottom so they can finally learn how to stand up on their own. As I said the words, a vibration on the desk startled us both. My phone. It was ringing. I looked at the screen. It was not a number I recognized. An unknown caller. I motioned for Keisha to wait, and I answered, putting it on speaker. This is Nate Price. There was a noise on the other end. A sound like a choked sob, the sound of someone trying to speak through a broken throat. Dad. My blood ran cold. It was Brenda. I hadn't heard her voice since she was on the floor of the hotel suite wailing. This voice was different. It was hoarse. It was empty. All the rage, all the entitlement, all the fire. It was gone. Dad, please. She was crying, that awful, jagged sound of someone who has no tears left. I don't have anywhere to go. My cards don't work. The motel, they kicked me out. My friends won't answer my calls. She took a gasping breath. I'm at a shelter, Dad, a homeless shelter on the east side. It's so cold. I'm scared. Keisha looked at me, her face a mask of pity, her hand flying to her mouth. I could see her heart breaking for her cousin. Brenda's voice came again, small and desperate. I don't have anything. I have nothing. She finally broke. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, Dad, I'm so sorry. I listened. I let the silence stretch. I let her apology, the first real apology I had heard from her in 20 years, hang in the air of my quiet, warm apartment. I thought of Anne-Marie. I thought of her words. Let her learn to stand. This was the moment. This was the test. Not for her, for me. Would I be the weak father I had always been? Would I run down there, pull out my checkbook and fix it all? Would I put her back in a penthouse, wrap her in a safety net, and teach her that her actions had no consequences? Or would I finally be the man Anne-Marie knew I needed to be? I took a deep breath. Keisha was watching me, her eyes wide, waiting to see what I would do. I know, Brenda, I said. My voice was not angry. It was not cold. It was just calm. I know you have nothing. I know you're scared. She sobbed, a sound of faint, desperate hope. You'll come get me, Dad. You'll help me. I closed my eyes. I know, Brenda. I said again, my voice gentle but absolutely firm. I know. I paused. So, I said, putting all of my wife's strength, all of my newfound resolve into the final question. What is your plan? Here is the lesson learned from this story and a call to action as you requested. This story is a powerful lesson in consequences. It teaches us that true character isn't measured by the wealth you display, but by the integrity you maintain when no one is watching. Brenda and Chad built a life on entitlement and deceit, assuming their father's kindness was a weakness they could exploit. But enabling bad behavior isn't love. Sometimes the truest act of love is not to provide a safety net, but to step back and finally let someone face the consequences of their own choices. That is the only way they can ever learn to build something real for themselves. What would you have done in Nate's place? Was he too harsh, or was this tough love the only way Brenda could learn? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.